Between 1942 and 1945, the Pacific theater of World War II presented a uniquely brutal and unforgiving environment for combat, dominated by dense jungle undergrowth, oppressive humidity, and terrain that often restricted visibility to fewer than 30 yards, creating a battlefield where conventional long-range engagements were rare and where every step forward carried the constant threat of ambush. In this close-quarters context, the United States Marine Corps deployed a weapon that would, at least in theory, challenge every assumption the Japanese military held about modern warfare: the 12-gauge pump-action shotgun. Both the Winchester Model 1897, designed by John Browning and refined over decades, and the later Model 1912, engineered to prevent accidental discharge, were brought into service in substantial numbers, with approximately 25,000 Model 97s and between 60,000 and 80,000 Model 12s issued to Marine units. Representing a tactical capability the Imperial Japanese Army had never accounted for in its decades of doctrinal preparation. Japanese training manuals addressed rifles, machine guns, mortars, and submachine guns, but the shotgun, a weapon considered a hunting tool rather than a tool of war, never appeared in strategic calculations, and this gap in planning theoretically created an opportunity for the Marines, particularly in night infiltration encounters where Japanese doctrine relied on hand-to-hand combat and bayonet attacks to exploit their perceived superiority in close-quarters fighting. In practical terms, the shotgun's capabilities were extraordinary at the ranges imposed by jungle warfare. The Model 97, lacking a trigger disconnector, allowed for slamfire, enabling a trained Marine to discharge 6 rounds of .000 buckshot in roughly 2 seconds, each shell containing 9 heavy pellets, creating a dense spread that made missing a target nearly impossible in obstructed, vegetative terrain. The Model 1912 improved on the design with safer internal hammer mechanisms and greater reliability, while both weapons' short barrels, heat shields, and bayonet compatibility made them adaptable to jungle patrols, bunker clearing, and night defense. Buckshot patterns spread predictably over distances of 10, 20, and 30 yards, making the weapon devastatingly effective in theory within the limited visibility of dense foliage, mangrove swamps, and jungle river crossings. Marines trained extensively at Camp Pendleton, California, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and Parris Island, South Carolina, practicing point security, ambush responses, night perimeter defense, cave and bunker clearing, and prisoner management, learning to exploit the shotgun's firepower while balancing ammunition consumption and barrel heating. Training manuals, particularly TM 9-285, published in September 1942, codified shotgun employment, covering multiple models including Winchester, Remington, Stevens, and Ithaca shotguns. Divisions were authorized hundreds of shotguns. Marine Table of Organization E100 from 1943 specified 306 per division, but in reality, these weapons remained a small fraction of total small arms, often allocated to military police, pioneer battalions, and specialized rifle squads, reflecting their role as a niche rather than standard frontline weapon. Despite the weapon's potential, environmental and logistical realities imposed severe constraints. Tropical humidity caused paper-cased shells to absorb moisture and swell, frequently jamming in the chamber, rendering the shotgun unreliable until the introduction of brass-cased M19 shells in March 1945, long after the Guadalcanal, Ioima, and Okinawa campaigns had concluded or were nearing completion. Guadalcanal, the first major American offensive in the Pacific from August 1942 to February 1943, saw the use of shotguns primarily for patrols and perimeter defense, with photographic evidence showing point men carrying shotguns, yet official reports emphasized rifles, Browning M1917 machine guns, and 37mm canister fire as decisive, with only passing mention of shotguns. Japanese forces, operating under a doctrine emphasizing spiritual courage, infiltration, and close-range combat to compensate for industrial inferiority, did not prepare specifically for the shotgun, yet the weapon's limited practical deployment meant that the absence of Japanese countermeasures reflected its marginal impact rather than strategic oversight. Veterans' accounts reinforce this view. While Marines acknowledged the shotgun's effectiveness in ambushes, night defense, or narrow jungle paths, they overwhelmingly relied on rifles, submachine guns, mortars, and flamethrowers for sustained engagements. The logistical burden of heavy 12-gauge shells, limited ammunition capacity compared to rifles, and prioritization of standard munitions further constrained the weapon's battlefield utility. As the war progressed through New Guinea, the Philippines, Ioma, and Okinawa, the shotgun remained a specialized tool, suited to point security, perimeter control, urban clearing, and prisoner management rather than front-line offensive operations. In New Guinea, constant rain and extreme humidity compounded ammunition problems, leaving many units to leave shotguns behind in rear areas in favor of more reliable M1 Garand, Thompson submachine guns, and bars. In the Philippines, urban combat in Manila demonstrated both the potential and limitations of the weapon. Shotguns excelled in room clearing during surprise encounters but were ineffective against barricaded positions and prepared kill zones, where grenades, flamethrowers, and Thompson submachine guns proved superior. The Battle of Ioma similarly showed the shotgun's secondary role, as Marines relied on flamethrowers, demolition teams, and coordinated combined arms tactics to clear fortified positions, with shotguns contributing only minimally, further constrained by remaining paper shell ammunition. Okinawa illustrated the same pattern: dense fortifications, prepared Shuri-line defenses, and Japanese adoption of defense-in-depth strategies left little opportunity for close-range shotgun employment, restricting their use to final fortification reduction and military police duties. Post-war analysis and veterans' memoirs underscore the disconnect between theoretical expectations and practical combat reality. Shotguns were present and occasionally effective, but their actual impact remained limited. References in oral histories, memoirs, and official after-action reports are sparse, and no significant statistical data exists correlating shotgun use to casualties or tactical success. Industrial production, which delivered tens of thousands of shotguns, primarily supplied training facilities, rear area security, and military police, rather than frontline assault units. Comparisons with other nations' forces, British, Australian, Soviet, and Chinese, showed that successful jungle and urban operations could occur without shotguns, reinforcing their role as an auxiliary weapon. Popular culture, however, amplified the shotgun's perceived importance, creating an enduring myth of Marines clearing Japanese positions with trench guns, which far exceeded their actual battlefield role. The history of American shotguns in the Pacific War illustrates a broader lesson in military innovation. Technical capability alone does not guarantee tactical success. A weapon's effectiveness depends on integration with doctrine, training, supply, and the realities of terrain and enemy tactics. The shotgun, despite devastating short-range firepower and innovative features like slamfire, was hindered by environmental conditions, logistical limitations, and narrow tactical application. Japanese infantry may have been unprepared for the shotgun, but the limited deployment meant this unpreparedness had little practical effect on battle outcomes, which were determined by overwhelming American firepower, coordinated combined arms, industrial superiority, and naval and air support. The eventual adoption of brass-cased M19 ammunition in March 1945 addressed reliability issues but came too late to affect major campaigns. The shotgun story, therefore, is one of both capability and limitation, a weapon that embodied American ingenuity and industrial might, that captured the imagination of popular culture, yet whose historical significance was ultimately peripheral to the decisive elements of Pacific warfare. In analyzing its use, one gains insight into the complex interplay between technology, doctrine, logistical reality, and the mythology that arises when dramatic weapons capture the public imagination, revealing that in war, presence does not equal impact, and innovation must meet circumstance to truly shape the battlefield.